Hey everybody, it is Tuesday, March 9th, 2021, and I am coming with you for this week's Toolbox Tuesday, where I'm going to be continuing my discussion on addiction. Today, I am going to pick it up where I left off last week with the music video by Demi Lovato, where she posed a really interesting and powerful question. I wonder when I love me is enough. And I am posing this question and posting this video within the context of addiction, substance use disorders. I wonder when I love me is enough. And so, in this context, in the context of addiction, I love me becomes enough when that's all you have left, or that's all you can manage or muster. But interestingly enough, when it comes to addiction, sometimes that's the first thing to go out the door. When it comes to addiction and substance use disorders, let's start at the root by talking about the 10 classes of drugs that can form an addiction or a substance use disorder. So there are more than 10 drugs that can lead you here, but there are 10 groups or classes. So alcohol, caffeine, cannabis, hallucinogens, inhalants, opioids, sedatives, hypnotics, anxiolytics, and stimulants. The 10 classes or groups of drugs that can lead to addiction. I would also like to add 3 honorable mentions. 1. Gambling. Gambling is listed as a potential for addiction in the DSM-5. Food. Food is not listed as the potential for addiction within the DSM-5. However, it is getting an honorable mention here, and so is sex. Sex is not discussed as an addiction in the diagnostic manual either. However, all 3 of these things have something in common with the 10 classes of substances that I just discussed. And that those 10 classes or groups of substances and those 3 honorable mentions all do something very special in the brain. And it's that they trigger the reward center, the nucleus accumbens, the ventral tegmentum, whatever you want to call the pleasure center in your brain, the part of you that recognizes the feel-good dopamine. So all of those things that I just named triggers that. The interesting thing about that place, the ventral tegmentum, the V10, the nucleus accumbens, the pleasure center, the reward place, is that that's also where memories are formed. So when it comes to remembering what makes you feel good, remembering what makes you feel good faster, remembering what works, it's all there. So what helps us feel good fast in moments of stress? Food, sex, alcohol, cannabis, caffeine, cocaine, heroin, as the old heads like to call it, amphetamines, sedatives. Those things are all super good at removing our experience with stress or undesirable feelings, emotions, thoughts, all of that. Interestingly enough, when it comes to addiction, the formation process isn't always due to stress, due to trauma, due to violence, or some unfortunate circumstances. Think about the way that we conceptualize and socialize substance use here in the United States, at least. There are commercials, it's on the side of buses, bus stops, billboards, served in every restaurant almost. Maybe every restaurant. Like, I guess not McDonald's or Burger King, but like if you're going to go sit down and eat, there's a decent chance that you can probably have some alcohol there. And then think about the way that we limit it. So alcohol, cigarettes, now can't get either unless you're 21. Before cigarettes was 18, but it's this thing where children get to watch their parents indulge, they get to watch, them have fun and celebrate, and it's something that only adults get to have. So automatically it creates this kind of allure for children. And As they grow, they move into this stage where they experiment, where we experiment. And so we know the tales and the stories about, teenage children going off and experimenting with alcohol, and there's some catastrophic occurrence. Many of us have been to parties, underage parties, where alcohol was available to us and we had at it. College frat parties, parties that are not frat parties. It's a thing, at least for alcohol. And also, we can be real and say that there are usually other substances available where alcohol is available. And these places are good time places. Go to celebrate. 21st birthday, alcohol, maybe some cigarettes, maybe some other substances. Wedding, alcohol, cigarettes, some other substances. Let's say you and dad want to bond over the fact that your first child was born. Alcohol, cigarettes, maybe some other substances. Those are great things, milestones that are meant to help us celebrate and, build closeness. Once we start to know that these substances are good at making us feel good, making us feel better, improving or enhancing our moments, it's an easy jump to think that we will utilize them on hard or darker moments. Lose your job? That sucks. It also feels awful. Alcohol, cigarettes, maybe some other substances. Under a lot of pressure, deadline at work? Cocaine, coffee, stimulants. It's a thing. And a lot of times, the first time it happens like that, as a way of medicating or enhancing performance, as some of them are able to do, the consequences aren't as detrimental as we are led to believe when we're watching Sandra Bullock in 28 Days. It's a slower, kind of more cunning and creeping thing that happens. So you come home from work stress, someone's nagging you, your boss is riding you, someone cut you off, traffic jam, got pulled over, cop was a dick, any of that. Get home, glass of wine, have a beer, have a smoke, whatever. Day 1, day 2, different set of life stressors. Had to go to the dentist. Kids were acting up. Husband's not doing the right thing. Wife is not doing the right thing. Landlord is calling about some stuff that you don't have control over. Got a ticket, got a boot, car got towed. Life on life terms in general. What makes you feel better? What can make you feel better faster? Well, luckily for us, our pleasure center, the place in our brain where memories are formed and where the feel-good stuff is activated, can tell us right on the spot, there's a substance for that. And that is a really functional thought. Your brain is telling you, if this sucks, you can do this. And it's true. Without judgment, it's true. You can use a substance to feel better during bad times. However, the addiction, the substance use disorder starts to set in when we turn to these substances, even in the face of very noticeable and measurable detriments. Drinking too much alcohol, using too much cocaine, engaging in too much heroin, using too much weed. These things have a tendency to take us away from the lives that we want for ourselves. There's a recovery time associated with drinking too much alcohol. There's a recovery time associated with using too much cocaine. There's a recovery time associated with smoking cannabis. And these recovery times can get longer and longer depending on how much you use. Can you drive to a kid's birthday party with your kids in the backseat of the car if you are smashed? Well, yeah, you can, but that's a big risk. Risking your children and still using alcohol is a sign that there's a problem starting to form. Putting your children in a vehicle while you're impaired is a sign of altered judgment. It means you're not thinking right. Womp womp. Are you calling out from work? Missing time? Still continuing to use? Womp womp. Problem starting to form. Are you borrowing money? not paying it back, unable to pay it back? Are you getting substances on credit, knowing that the income stream is dwindling? That's a yikes. That is an indication that a problem is forming. And continuing to use despite all these negative consequences is what makes clinicians, which makes medical providers, which makes social workers and people in the helping field all confident in saying that is a substance use disorder. That looks like it might be an addiction. So without judgment, without trying to bastardize anyone, without trying to make it seem like there's some moral kind of issue going on here, everyone can fall prey or fall victim to what happens when we introduce chemicals into our body. Drinking alcohol, drinking coffee or caffeine, using hallucinogens, smoking cannabis, using heroin, using cocaine, these things have the same impact on all of us. Using these substances will trigger the reward center in our brain, we will remember it, and it will make it more likely that we will want it again in the future. There's no character component to that. A lot of times people who have been hurt by folks in active addiction will kind of take a look at some of the characterological components and kind of make it about that. I have a relative who's an addict and they stole something from me. It's a character thing. It's not a character thing. It's not. It's really unfortunate that relatives will steal in order to get money for their substances. However, that's not their character, right? Another thing that happens is that after prolonged use, there's actual structural changes to the brain. The brain is physically changed because of the substances that we introduce to it. And so it might be easy to blame relative or bastardize relative or condemn relative for what they are doing. However, what they are doing is a result of actual physical and chemical interactions that are happening in their body. Now let's take it back to, a time when we heard about a friend or a family member or someone that we cared about, and they're like, hey, I'm actually not going to be drinking for a while. Or I actually quit smoking weed. How do we talk to them? How do we approach them? What do we have for them? People actually have to fight really, really hard against their own friends and family to not use substances when they don't want to. I have actually spent numerous hours in session with people helping them to develop refusal skills so that they could talk to their own friends and families about why they didn't want to engage in alcohol or substance use anymore. So when it comes to managing addiction, maintaining addiction, and the social, environmental, physical, biological components, we can all play a role in how this forms for the people that we love. Enabling. How do you make it possible for people with problem substance use to continue using? Do you give them what they ask for, knowing that they're going to do something that is not good for them? Do you allow them to come into your home knowing that they got the sticky hands when they're on that shit? This is where the shadow work comes in at. How do you protect yourself and your loved ones from this issue? It's not too late ever. However, it does get harder and harder and harder as time goes on. So I would say one of the best ways to prevent from addiction, or prevent an addiction from forming, is one, of course, not use substances at all. But if you find that that's unrealistic, using substances intentionally. Under what circumstances will you engage in alcohol use, or in caffeine use, or in cannabis use, or in cocaine or stimulant use, or in opiate use? Under what conditions will you use these substances? Having an answer for that will help you recognize when it's the time and a place, and when it is not the time and the place. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, absolutely feel free to post them on the Facebook page. You can post them on the YouTube page. If you go to my website, there's some contact information for folks who might want to talk a little bit more about this. As far as a consultation is concerned, definitely open for that. Until next time, have a great week, and I will be continuing this conversation on addiction prevention and treatment for the rest of the month. So thanks for watching, and until next time, God bless.